The hidden cost of doing everything right. There is a particular kind of frustration that often surfaces in midlife, and it doesn't always look dramatic from the outside. It isn't a crisis, it doesn't feel like collapse, it feels more like confusion. You are doing what you've always known to do. You are making thoughtful choices. You are trying to stay consistent. You are eating reasonably well, moving your body, paying attention to stress, attempting to sleep better when you can. You are not careless with your health. If anything, you're more informed now than you were years ago, and yet something has shifted. Your energy doesn't rebound the way it once did. Recovery takes longer. Progress feels slower, even when effort hasn't decreased. The return on investment, what you put in versus what you get back, somehow feels reduced. Just doesn't feel inconvenient. It actually feels destabilizing because many women built their confidence on a quiet agreement. Effort produces results. Work hard, see progress. Stay disciplined, feel better. Make smart decisions, and the body responds. For years, that agreement held until it didn't. And when it stops holding, the instinct is to assume you need to adjust something. Optimize more carefully, try harder, track better, be more precise. There must be a lever you haven't pulled yet. But beneath that search is something more uncomfortable. If I'm doing everything right, why isn't it working? That question exposes a belief many high-functioning women carry without realizing it. That responsible living should protect you from unpredictability. When the body stops behaving proportionally, it can feel like betrayal. Not dramatic betrayal, but subtle, quiet, enough to shake confidence. Midlife doesn't just change hormones, it changes predictability. What once felt linear now feels layered, and the more you have relied on discipline as stability, the more disruptive that shift becomes. This episode isn't going to soften that tension, it's going to examine it. Before we go further, a quick word of wisdom. I'm not your doctor, and this podcast isn't a substitute for professional medical advice. I'll share what the research says, what I've learned, and what might support you along the way. But before making changes to your diet or health routine, always check in with a qualified healthcare provider or practitioner. Now, let's look at what's actually happening beneath this shift. Not metabolically yet, but psychologically. Because before your metabolism changed, your expectations did. For many women, the real disruption isn't physical decline. It's the realization that the performance contract you made with yourself no longer guarantees the same return. And that contract deserves examination. For many women, the relationship with their body has quietly been built on a contract. It may never have been spoken out loud, but it shaped how you move through adulthood. The agreement went something like this. If I take care of myself, my body will cooperate. If I stay disciplined, I will stay stable. If I work hard, I will see results. For a long time, that agreement held. In your 20s and 30s, the body responded quickly. You could adjust something and see visible change. You could push through a busy season and recover with a few good nights' sleep. You could increase effort and expect a proportional return. There was elasticity in the system. There was responsiveness. That responsiveness reinforced more than health habits. It reinforced your identity. You became someone who could manage things, someone who could apply effort and create movement, someone who could stabilize a situation by being responsible and proactive. That predictability built confidence. It made you feel competent in your own skin. But midlife begins to renegotiate that contract. Hormones fluctuate in ways that are less predictable. Sleep becomes lighter or more fragmented. Recovery takes longer. Stress accumulates differently. The internal environment grows more sensitive to load, even when the external habits look consistent. Here's where the tension intensifies. The effort has not disappeared. In many cases, it has increased. You are more informed now, more intentional, more aware. You are paying attention to nutrition, movement, and stress in ways you may not have before. Yet the proportional return is no longer guaranteed. When that happens, the instinct for many women is to tighten control. If something is not responding, then perhaps the inputs need to be refined. Maybe there is a better plan, a more precise strategy, a variable that has not been accounted for. The solution must be somewhere in greater optimization. What often goes unexamined is whether the original agreement was ever meant to be permanent. The body was never designed to be controlled into lifelong compliance. It was responsive under certain conditions in a certain season, but responsiveness is not a promise that can be enforced indefinitely. When that responsiveness shifts, it does more than change your energy levels. It challenges the stability that predictability once provided. If confidence was built on the ability to influence outcomes, unpredictability can feel like a personal loss. That is why this stage feels heavier than it looks. It is not simply about fatigue or slower progress. It is about the realization that the equation has changed. And if the equation has changed, then continuing to operate under the old assumptions will only increase frustration. Before we talk about metabolism, we have to acknowledge this. You cannot respond wisely to a new season if you are still expecting the old contract to hold. If the performance contract was built on responsiveness, then the disruption you feel now is rooted in something very real. The body in midlife is not necessarily less capable, but it is less likely to rebound quickly. Elasticity is the ability to stretch, adapt, recover, and return quickly to baseline. Earlier in adulthood, that elasticity is often generous. You could absorb stress, recover from poor sleep, increase effort for a season, and still maintain relative stability. There was a sense of bounce back. Even when life felt demanding, the margin felt wide enough to hold it. Over time, that margin narrows. Hormonal shifts, particularly changes in estrogen and progesterone, begin to alter how the body handles stress and how quickly it recovers from it. Patterns become lighter and more easily disrupted. Blood sugar becomes slightly more reactive. Inflammation lingers longer after strain. Muscle recovery takes more time. None of these changes are dramatic on their own. Most are subtle, but collectively, they shift tolerance. What once felt manageable now feels heavier. This is where the misinterpretation often happens, because your habits may not look that different from 10 years ago. You are still eating balanced meals. You are still moving your body. You are still handling responsibilities. On paper, nothing appears extreme or careless. What has changed is tolerance. The same workload that once felt neutral now carries more impact. The same late night that once resolved after a good night's sleep now takes days to recalibrate. The same stressor that once passed through now lingers in your system, quietly influencing energy and recovery. That shift does not mean your body is failing. It means your body is more sensitive to cumulative load. And sensitivity is not weakness, it is information. When responsiveness decreases, many women instinctively increase effort. If the return feels smaller, then perhaps the input needs to be larger. More discipline, more precision, more structure, more control. But when elasticity has shifted, increasing input without adjusting total load only increases strain. This is where identity and physiology intersect in a very personal way. If your sense of steadiness was built on your ability to influence outcomes, reduced responsiveness can feel like losing leverage. And when leverage feels threatened, the reflex is to tighten your grip. Yet the body does not respond to pressure the way it once did. It responds to reduced load and consistent recovery. If stability has quietly narrowed, the answer is not necessarily more force. It may be recalibration, not because you are weaker than before, but because the internal environment has changed. The season is different, even if your standards have not. There is something deeper happening here than fatigue or slower progress. When the body becomes less predictable, it confronts more than your habits. It confronts your sense of control. For many high functioning women, control has never looked dramatic or rigid. It has looked responsible, structured, disciplined, thoughtful. You learned early that effort stabilizes things, that attention prevents problems, that consistency protects outcomes. That belief likely served you well. It created resilience, it built confidence, it helped you navigate demanding seasons without collapsing. But midlife has a way of revealing where effort quietly shifted into expectation. What goes unexamined is whether the assumption of control was ever sustainable. Many women are meticulous about counting metrics. They count calories, steps, hours worked, tasks completed, but they do not count cost in the same way. They do not calculate the emotional labor of holding households together, the cognitive strain of constant responsibility, the hormonal shifts that increase metabolic demand, or the cumulative stress of decades spent trying to manage everything well. When those costs remain invisible, the body eventually makes them visible, not as punishment, not as betrayal, but as information. There is not a call for you to prove your endurance. There is a call to practice wisdom. Wisdom acknowledges limits before they become crises. It recognizes that sustainability matters more than intensity. Wisdom accepts that seasons change and that faithful stewardship sometimes looks like recalibration rather than acceleration. There is nothing weak about admitting that the agreement you made with your younger body no longer holds in the same way. There is something deeply mature about adjusting expectations in response to reality. The invitation here is not to abandon effort, it is to release the assumption that effort guarantees control. Because when control becomes the goal, strain inevitably follows, and strain, sustained long enough, will always surface somewhere. There is another layer here that deserves to be named clearly. For many women who value faith, responsibility and stewardship, self discipline can quietly drift into self reliance, not in an obvious or rebellious way, but in a subtle one. Over time, we begin to believe that if we steward ourselves carefully enough, manage our habits wisely enough, and stay consistent long enough, we can secure a predictable outcome. That belief often feels virtuous. It feels mature. It feels like ownership of our health and our choices. But there is a difference between stewardship and control. Stewardship acknowledges that you are responsible for tending what has been entrusted to you. Control assumes that tending guarantees the result. Scripture repeatedly separates faithfulness from outcome. Faithfulness is measured in wisdom, obedience, and integrity. Outcome is influenced by variables that extend beyond personal effort. Seasons shift, bodies age, capacity changes, circumstances evolve. When we blur that distinction, we carry a burden that was never ours to hold. Midlife often exposes where discipline has quietly become a source of security. When the body becomes less predictable, it reveals how much confidence was tied to responsiveness. Health habits once produced clear feedback. That feedback may have reinforced a sense of control. When responsiveness shifts, it can feel like something is being taken away. But what is being revealed is not failure, it is limitation. Faith does not remove responsibility, but it reorders it. You are called to care for your body, not to command it. You are invited to steward your health, not to secure it through force. You are responsible for wise inputs, but you are not sovereign over adaptation. That distinction is not merely theological, it is deeply practical. When control loosens, strain decreases. When the demand for guaranteed return softens, pressure decreases. And when pressure decreases, the body often regains space it needs to adapt. In this season, faith may look less like proving your discipline and more like practicing trust. Passiveness, not neglect, but trust that wise stewardship is enough, even when outcomes are slower, subtler, or different than they once were. Releasing control does not mean lowering standards. It means acknowledging that outcomes are not the ultimate measure of faithfulness. And when that burden lifts, the body is no longer forced to carry what the spirit was never meant to demand. If you recognize yourself in this tension, resist the urge to overhaul everything. The instinct to fix, refine, or optimize more aggressively is understandable, but it often increases the very pressure your body is already carrying. Instead of escalating effort, choose one place to reduce pressure this week, not dramatically, just intentionally. It may look like softening the intensity of a workout, extending your sleep window slightly, declining one non essential obligation, or releasing the mental tally of what you believe you should be achieving. The goal is to not fix your metabolism in 7 days. The goal is to restore its stability. Next week, we'll talk about what happens when margin returns and how metabolic flexibility begins to rebuild when the body no longer feels forced into performance. Ability, not intensity, is what restores resilience, and resilience is what allows you to move forward sustainably. If you're looking for foundational support as you navigate this season, I'll link the supplements I personally use through FullScript in the show notes. I choose them for their quality and transparency and because they support stability without overcomplicating things. If you choose to purchase through those links, it supports the podcast at no additional cost to you. Remember, you are not failing, you are adjusting. An adjustment is not weakness, it is wisdom. So until next time, friend, stay nourished, stay cozy, and choose wellness one thoughtful step at a time.